And we are live, guys. Welcome to another Founder Wisdom podcast with legend Lloyed Lobo. Has a very cool name. Lobo means wolf in Spanish. The guy is quite interesting, I must say. He splits his time between Dubai and SF, two cities that I intend to visit pretty soon. Has his own podcast, talks openly about mental health, about growth, about VC, about all kinds of topics, about AI. So this is obviously an AI edition. His main company that is called Boast.ai. He has a podcast called Traction as well. And Lloyd said that the honor was all his, and I don't agree with that. Lloyd, like, the honor's all mine. You have a huge audience. You're really successful. So, I mean, thank you for deciding to hop on the call today, the podcast. Can you briefly introduce yourself? Tell us a bit more about Boast.
Definitely. And, the honor is all mine because I don't view success as money in the bank, but the relationships you have when you die. It's never the money in your bank. It's the people around your tombstone that matter the most. So honor is all mine. I'm super excited when people reach out and when I get to know new people, right? I draw my energy from people. I feel like genuinely my purpose in life is bringing people together. Awesome. So quick background on myself. How I got into entrepreneurship, but really I was a refugee of the Gulf War. As an 8-9-year-old, experienced the Gulf War when the country came to a standstill and the community came together to evacuate the population to safety. Many years later, we immigrated to Canada, went to university. In university, I met my best friend now, Alex Popa, and my co-founder. And Alex and I studied engineering together. We were partners in every project. And after we finished engineering, smart guy, smart engineer, he got into Johnson & Johnson's engineering leadership program. They used to take 2 per country per year. And I went into working at startups right away. And after Alex was at Johnson & Johnson a couple of years, he said he wanted to do a startup. He did that startup and it didn't work out. It failed. And he felt he was missing accounting and finance skills. And that's why it didn't work out. So he went and studied accounting and finance. And his unique combination of engineering and accounting took him into the world of R&D tax credits. And if you don't know or aren't familiar, globally, hundreds of billions of dollars are given by governments in research and development, tax credits, and innovation funding to support businesses. But the application process is cumbersome. It's prone to frustrating audits, and receiving the money takes a long time. So Alex says he was working at this big 4 accounting firm, manually doing these R&D tax credits. He called me and he's like, man, I want to go and do a startup in the space. And incidentally, I was working at a startup where, unicorn porn, hustle porn, the whole hustle culture where everyone is working 24/7 was very popular back then, right? And it's, for some companies, it gets worse and worse. But anyway, I used to work at this startup where the CEO felt everyone needs to be in the office late. I was running GTM there, go to market there, and I was every day till 8-9 o'clock, which is fine. I drive, I'm a driver. I work hard, I play hard. But one week I started going home at 6. And he sends me an email saying, what's causing you to go home at 6 in the evening? Your wife is a medical student and she's in residency, so she's working 100 hours a week. So what do you need to go home for? I used to like it when you're in the office till late night. And, when I went home, what had happened was I hadn't seen my parents in years and my parents were visiting. That's why I was going home at 6 that week. And I was just in a bad mood, like my energy was zapped. It was taken away. And that's when Alex called me and he's like, hey, man, you want to do this startup? I'm like, I don't care what we do, man. As long as we build a company that we want to work for, I'm in. So that was the journey of Boast. I was in Philadelphia at the time, moving to San Francisco. Alex was in Vancouver, temporarily moving to Calgary. So we started like a remote first company, although I went and camped out in Calgary. And that's how the idea came about, right? And our vision was this. Innovation rules the world. every dollar spent in innovation returns 20 to the economy. Vaccines, robots, clean drinking water is a function of innovation. Yet, innovation dies very quickly, right? Like 99% of the innovators, they're not successful. In the last 15 years, more than 50% of the Fortune 500 companies have evaporated. Why? Because they don't have the funding and the resources to become successful, right? They don't have the know-how. And we said through Boast, we'll build a company that not only funds businesses who are innovating and gets them the money, but also gives them the intelligence and the know-how and the community to help them become successful. And so that was the backstory on how we started. Fast forward many years, we were able to bootstrap to 10 million in revenue. We secured between debt and equity over 100 million in capital. We got thousands of customers across US and Canada, and the business is doing really well.
I love the niche. How are you guys making money on that?
Yeah, so for every dollar we get companies, we take a small percentage of it. It's like we get you the money and we take a percentage of it. You don't pay if you don't get paid.
Love it. I mean, these are the best business models. I had this Grant guy coming on the pod from Canada too. He's starting a similar startup. I was like, good job, dude. Especially in Canada, right? I was a recipient of these funds myself with my first startup, which was a nootropic. So I've got huge grants to prove the efficiency of the supplement. It was proved by this INRS lab, INRS, which you probably know in Laval, Quebec. But yeah, we still failed. We still had to close down. Canadian government's quite good for that. So amazing niche. I love the industry. You're like super ambitious. You started in sales. You know, I didn't know that you studied engineering. That's an interesting background. So you tasted money, then you were like, okay, I'm gonna start my own stuff. That's how the greats do, right? And like you're super ambitious. You accomplished quite a lot since like your time on this planet Earth. Do you think you got that ambition from the adversity of going through a war?
You know, I say this a lot these days. Pain is the precondition for growth. And I've through my experience, my podcast, my traction community, I've talked to thousands of entrepreneurs. The most successful ones have one thing in common. And by any means, I don't consider myself successful. Like I started with, it's the relationships that matter and nothing else. But pain is a big driver of ambition, right? Let's talk about ambition there for a second. All these entrepreneurs that I talked to, they had one thing in common. They had a burning anger or spite to change the status quo, to make right or wrong, to prove the naysayers incorrect. They had this frustration to change something. Happy people, unfortunately, it's very hard to drive change. And I have both sides of the coin, right? Like, growing up, my mother grew up in the slums of India, and we were refugees of the Gulf War. And I was a bumbling idiot growing up, right? Never didn't really finish high school. I missed my exams, somehow finagled myself into engineering, which was luck. Again, luck is a big part of what happens to you in life. So I didn't finish engineering. I didn't finish high school. And when I moved to Canada, I applied for engineering schools, and nobody cared, right? Obviously, no transcripts. And one college asked me to write the entrance exams, which I did, and they said, "What happened to your transcripts?" And I said, there's political unrest in the country I came from, in Kuwait. So it'll take a little bit to come. I didn't know what else to say. They're like, okay, start the semester and then, bring us the transcripts, but you can't carry on if we don't have your transcripts. I kid you not, man, after a semester, they forgot to follow up.
Oh my God.
So I freaking graduated engineering with no high school diploma, right? But so that was luck. But it's also that drive, that ambition. When you come from nothing and you've seen adversity, like we were refugees of Gulf War. My parents grew up very poor. So it's always like hey, why does this privilege or success need to be in the hands of the ones that who have access? Everybody should be able to. And so then how do you compensate if you don't have access? Access being money or a network. You build it, right? You build it. And the only way to build it is to keep hustling, to keep pushing, right? That was the thing. So when I was in engineering, actually, as I graduated, I wanted to be an entrepreneur all my life. So I asked somebody, a family member who was an entrepreneur, what is the most important skill to be a successful entrepreneur? And he said, sales. Imagine this, you tell this to a 22-year-old graduating university. What would they do graduating engineering, which they've sank so much money into? Most people will probably be like, okay, whatever, right? I took my first job making cold calls after graduating software engineering. My parents lost it. My parents are of Indian heritage. They're like, my son's making $30,000 doing cold calls when he graduated engineering. and our undergrad thesis was collision avoidance on real-time vehicles. So it was algorithms for self-driving car. And this is in the early 2000s, right? And they were like, our relatives and our friends' kids, got job at Microsoft and like Apple and like, what are you doing, right? But fast forward today, I am everything I am because of those scale skills. Think about it as an entrepreneur. You are convincing customers when you have no product to try you. You are convincing people to work for you when you have no money to pay them. You are convincing potential investors. You're convincing the press. You're convincing your
Partners.
wife that, please, I'm going to bring no money for the next year. Help me, So you're convincing everybody, and, the skills
Yourself.
yourself being the biggest part of it. The things you learn in sales, which is developing a thick skin, tenacity, grit, improving your messaging, pivoting on the fly, right? Like somebody says bad news and now you got to pivot on the fly. Those skills are indispensable to everything you do. And I honestly, if I wouldn't have done that, I wouldn't be able to, be where I am today. So I'm super thankful for that family member who told me sales is the most important thing if you want to start a company.
I have a question for you, though. I have a similar background, and I do have a chip on on my shoulder. Although my parents were medium, higher class, various chips we could talk about. But nowadays, I'm pivoting to a product focused CEO. You're focusing on community-led growth. I love communities. I love product-led growth as well. Do you feel new founders should start in sales or go straight up for product and community, which seems more scalable to me?
I don't think they're mutually exclusive. The skills you learn in sales, like think about it this way. You go to university, you don't learn one subject, you learn like 10 subjects, right? Being a founder is like that. You got to, rather than saying, I'm going to build Rome in a day, the only way to eat an elephant is one bite at a time. So you're like, okay, you know what? I need to learn a little bit of skills. I need to learn a little bit of product. I need to learn like different things. And you just schedule time for yourself to spend practical time in those areas every day. And over 1, 2, 3 years, when you do that, the compound interest on that is huge, right? What is success? Success is nothing but compound interest on a few things done consistently well over time. And success is your definition of success. So that's the other thing to remember, right? A lot of times we think, success is I go and raise venture capital or have an exit or I take a company unicorn. That is building somebody else's definition of success. Before you become a founder, I urge everyone, and this is advice given to me by Jafar Ovanati. He's the founder of Poppy. Previously, he founded Lupio. And he gave me one day this advice when we were sitting at our conference in Toronto, and it made my life very clear. And he said, write down what your personal definition of success is, how much money you want in your bank account, which I had written anyway ages ago in my 20s. Is there a version of the company you don't want to work for? And how long do you want to keep running this business? It's very important because you know what happens is most people, they burn out because they don't have enough. The feeling of contentment. Not having enough meaning you keep moving the goalpost. Say you wrote down, I want to, the day I have 10 million, I'm going to retire. Or like, I'm going to do things FIRE, right? Financially independent, retire early, meaning focus on the things that you love doing, which is what? Ability to do what you want, when you want, where you want, with whom you want, right? You wake up doing things you're passionate about. But then you get to 10 million and you're like, you know what, actually, now I'm going to go for 50. And then I'm going to go for 100. And then I'm going, like, it's a never ending pot. As long as you're passionate about the problem you're solving and the customer you're creating the impact for, keep going. But if it's a moving goalpost because it's only money, you're never going to be fulfilled in life. So I think what's really important is to write down your values. What you care about most. Like money should be a means to an end. It's not an end in itself, right? If money buys you freedom, it's a means to an end, right? But if money is like, okay, you know what, I'm just like watching my bank account accumulate like a monopoly, then that's not good for anyone, right? It's not good for you personally. So I think writing those things down, which is where most founders don't start, is like, what is my personal definition of success? How much money do I want in my bank account? How long do I want to run this company? Is there, most importantly, a version of this company I don't want to work for? You become what you say no to, right? Because when you keep saying yes to everything, you burn out. So writing these two things, particularly from all these questions, is like, what is my personal definition of success? Which is, it can't be money. It has to be X number of experiences, things you do. What are you looking to do with the money, basically? How much money do I need in my bank account to hit my personal definition of success where I can do whatever? And then, is there a version of this company I don't want to work for? I think those are very critical things founders should write down.
Right. I think it's a feeling as well. I really love the compounding definition you mentioned. Well, first, it's about reaching your goal, right? What's the definition of intelligence? Well, reaching your goals, there's various definition. Mine is probably, the feeling that I'm getting, which is very esoteric to talk about as a CEO, but it's, am I happy with that? Is that my ideal life? Am I flowing? And then can I accumulate that energy to get the ultimate form of freedom? But again, very subjective. So thank you for sharing that. We will have to do a round two, but before we actually do, I want to tell you about the time you almost died 2 years ago. Or 3 years ago, because of COVID. The second episode would be about community, a growth-led community or community-led growth. But then I just want to finish the Lloyd chapter there. Like, shit has gone pretty south in your life 2-3 years ago. Tell us about that moment.
All your life you chase success looking for happiness, and I did. When success came, which was somebody else's definition of success, which is money, I ended up lost and depressed. So, I kept focusing on chasing and chasing and chasing. And we were going through this deal during the pandemic. And my wife would always say, hey, stop and smell the roses. Nobody cares about the 1-2 vacations you take a year. We want to spend time together every day, phones down. And I said, no. Like, trust me, when the deal goes through, we'll take everyone to Bora Bora. It was our dream destination. And, obviously COVID, the business, doing a deal, investment deal during that time sucked the life out of you. But anyway, the deal went through, and we booked everyone to Bora Bora. 2 days before the Bora Bora trip, I got bilateral COVID pneumonia. Both my lungs were shot. I was in the hospital, unable to breathe.
Holy fuck.
And on oxygen, and I wasn't sure I was just going to live or die. And as I looked up and I said to myself only one thing: if I died today, my biggest regret would be my wife's words. Nobody stopped to smell the roses. Your kids barely spend time with you. They'll call you uncle very soon. And that was a very difficult time of my life. And I thought I would change after that. and this is a lesson, maybe good to end this on. I thought I would change after that. And so I didn't though, right? So after that incident, I came back. Boast had grown from like 30, 40 people to 100 plus people. We hired so many people. And I just got busier. And that August, my daughter comes to me and she says, she was 8 at the time. She's like, Dad, you've gotten worse, but you promised after COVID that you'd spend more time with us. What happened? And I said, sweetheart, there's like so many people now in the company. We got to make sure things are on the right track. So we make them whole and we do justice by their faith in us. And she said, why don't you go and work for somebody who thinks like you so I can have my dad back? And my heart sank. I still didn't change, man. A couple of weeks later, I was at a company offsite, at a management offsite, and my phone is always down, right? I pick up the phone. I had like 20 missed calls. And as soon as I picked up the phone, it was my wife's best friend. She's like, your wife went into labor. She went into labor for a third kid. And she's like, you're such an asshole. It's the third time and you're not here. Like with 3 kids, every time she went into labor, I wasn't there. So I took the next flight, which was, I couldn't take it until morning. And I barely made it to the birth of my 3rd kid. A couple of weeks later, when the company had grown, I'm a 0 to 1 guy. I'm a pirate. And at some point you got to transition from being a pirate to a Navy. So the kind of people we hired were all big company Navy people. And I just couldn't gel with them, right? We came to a decision that it was time for me to transition from the day-to-day operations and move to a board-only role. And when that decision was made, because I was frictioning with them, I went home and I hugged my wife and I cried and I said, hey, I'm sorry for all the times I put you second. And today the company doesn't need me and you're the only person there. I'm sorry. And I ended up depressed after, because, no matter how much money you make, leaving a company you founded is fraught with mental health issues for a founder, right? It's like you have a kid, let's say. Some wealthy person says, you know what? I'm going to look after your kid, but I'm going to basically pay you for the kid's expenses all their life, the best college, the best house, everything. But I own 50% of your child. And so I need to be part of that decision-making, right? And then how would you feel, right? Like, that's what happens is all of our worries in life are nothing but attachment. I think got too emotionally attached. It inevitably becomes your baby versus a business, right? And so I was too emotionally attached, and it was time for me to step down. And I ended up depressed, overweight, drunk. And one day my wife said to me, if something happens to you, we're the only ones who are going to be left crying, and you got to change things around. And we changed the environment. I ended up moving from San Francisco to Dubai, just change of pace. Dubai, nobody cares about, what startup you're doing. Everyone works to live, not the other way around. And it was just a change of scenery. I have a lot of family, friends growing up in the Middle East there. And that changed my life. I got healthier. I got stronger. I dropped like 50 pounds in a matter of weeks. And, there's I've written a lot about this, mental health for founders on LinkedIn, and my fitness journey before, after pictures. So that was a big transformation. When I was moving to Dubai, though, I found a book, my journal, in which I wrote down these notes, like how much money you want in your bank account, what's your personal definition of success, is that a version of the company you don't want to work for? And my jaw dropped, man. All those answers I had written down ages ago. How much money you want in your bank account? Check. Is there a version of the company you don't want to work? Check. It's just, it was through COVID and through, everything that happened to me. It was the universe telling me that you were ready to leave already. You had written these answers down, but you were fighting it, right? And that's why I tell now founders, write down these answers, write down your values, and then don't budge. because the only way to enjoy life is to know when enough is enough, right? Comparison is a thief of joy, right? Life and business is a marathon, it's not a sprint. If you don't take care of yourself, you won't be able to take care of the business or your family. Focus on your health, focus on your well-being, surround yourself with great people, right? When we were refugees of the Gulf War, going on this rickety bus from Kuwait to Baghdad to Jordan, we weren't sure if we were going to live or die. But the one thing was common in that bus is everyone around was laughing and singing and playing the guitar like nothing ever happened. And I realized, like, it's neither the destination nor the journey. It's the companions that matter the most. You could be on a shitty journey on the way to hell, but great companions make it memorable. And so great companions can put you in the best state of mind or can make you feel like a peasant, right? So surround yourself by good people. Number one, put yourself in a state of good mental and physical health. Eat clean, work out, spend time with loved ones, positive energy, and your life will change, right? It's not about running without an end game, without a goal. It's about figuring out, hey, what is the life I want to live? And build your work around it, right?
Wow, lots to unpack. I love the last analogy, although I wouldn't fancy my trip as a trip to hell. But yeah, yesterday I thought about that. The startup life, is it a trip in hell to the Mount Eden or whatever? I mean, hell of a life, Lloyd. Glad to have done this round one with you. Hopefully, we'll have a round two talking about technically what you do. But thank you for sharing all of that and being that open. Where can people find out more about you?
Definitely. My LinkedIn for now is Lloyd, Lloyed, Lobo. It's open. I accept all connections. You can follow me as well. Soon, I will have my book out, and we'll talk about that in episode 2. It'll be on lloydlobo.com or grassrootstogreatness.com or communityledgrowth.io. You can follow me on my podcast. Just search for Traction Podcast on Spotify or Apple or YouTube.